This build is insanely good for GMs in Season 23 and for really any challenging endgame content. I'm going to break down exactly how to use it. It gives you incredible survivability, the ability to stun all the champions without having to use any weapons, and it's just really fun using stasis builds, something that I've wanted to do for a very long time and haven't been able to until just recently when Bungie buffed stasis across the board with the launch of Season 23. And so let's jump into this Renewal Grass build that we're using Wicked Implement with. First things first, we got Silence and Squall the Super. You don't have any other variations, and we do throw our supers a decent amount, but that's not the main focus of this build. We do have Gambler's Dodge, which we're trying to dodge near enemies to get our melees back. This is going to be really important, so make sure to have this on. Triple Jump because we're in PvE, of course. Withering Blades are only options, so you're going to have that. Next up, we're going to have Duskfield, which ties in really well to our exotic, which is Renewal Grass. And then for our aspects, we'll definitely want Touch of Winter to make our grenade even more powerful. The Duskfield grenade will have an increased slow field size and create a small stasis crystal on impact, and that crystal will actually give us damage resistance, which is huge. That's why we'll really want that. You can sometimes throw the grenade on yourself if you're in a panic or if you're trying to kill enemies from close range, or you can throw it just on the enemies, slow them, freeze them, and basically make it so that they can't shoot you. And the Grandmaster is very, very effective. You'll see both styles of gameplay as I'm running through the GM, the corrupted GM, and the gameplay behind you here. For the next aspect, I kind of struggled to pick the exact one that I wanted. I ended up finally going with Grim Harvest, and the reason why is because you defeat slow or frozen combatants, it creates stasis shards, and then when you pick those up, you get more melee energy. And because I was throwing so many Withering Blades, and because of the mods that we have, this would actually feed my Duskfield back to me. That's why I ended up going with that one overall. But you could probably pick a different aspect and it wouldn't really affect too much for this build. Now for the fragments that I chose in the gameplay that you see here behind me, we have Whisper of Shards, shattering a stasis crystal, temporarily boost your grenade recharge rate, shattering additional stasis crystals, increase the duration of this benefit. Now this is really, really nice for two reasons. One is that our Duskfield grenade now creates little stasis crystals inside of it due to Touch of Winter, and so we're going to break those. And then secondly, our exotic of choice is going to be Wicked Implement here, which is also going to create those stasis crystals in there. And in creating those stasis crystals, we'll also be able to get more of that increased recharge rate, and that's the ability to be able to throw basically infinite Duskfield grenades as we go through this GM. So that's the first gameplay loop we have there with the fragment, Whisper of Shards. The next one we have is Whisper of Durance, which just basically makes your slow apply for a little bit longer. This is going to be important to make sure that you actually defeat the targets while they're still slowed, and of course we just enjoy that effect overall. A pretty powerful fragment. And then we'll move on to the next one, which was Whisper of Torment. You gain grenade energy each time you take damage from targets. Now, obviously in a GM there's just always so many adds, they're very hard to kill and clear, so you're constantly taking damage, and so this will just give you your grenade back a little bit faster. The next one I chose was Whisper of Chains. While you're near frozen targets or a friendly stasis crystal, you take reduced damage, and those crystals that we create from both our Duskfield grenade are going to give us crazy damage resistance, and on top of that, the crystals that we create from our Wicked Implement are going to give us excellent damage resistance. That's why this is really, really nice and a lot of fun to use this fragment for survivability, especially in GMs where survivability is kind of the key thing for that. The last fragment that we're going to be talking about is Whisper of Refraction, which is defeating slowed or frozen targets, grants you class ability energy. Now, obviously we're slowing a ton of targets with just our scout rifle slows targets, and we're slowing targets that are affected by the Duskfield grenade. And so basically we're going to have a really nice gameplay loop of getting our class ability back really fast, getting our melees back really fast, and getting our grenades back really fast. So all three of them basically just creates an infinite ability spam, which is kind of what you're looking for in most builds, I would say. So those are all the fragments that I chose right there for the gameplay you see here behind me. Now we're going to go through the weapons. Of course, Polaris Lance is super nasty, and I highly recommend to use that for almost all your builds, especially when you're in GMs where you can sit back from a long distance. But I really, really like Wicked Implement when I'm using stasis builds. I showed you that previously with the last stasis build on Warlock. Now that I'm on Stasis Hunter with Renewal Grass, I'm still using Wicked Implement because it's just so nice. The synergy is so beautiful. Any stasis build, love this, and it's still really good. You get to use it at a distance. It's still an excellent option, so I'm using that, and then I'm using Cartesian Coordinate, and I'm using Briar's Contempt. These are just damage output weapons. I literally can't even stun any champions in the GM because the champions are unstoppable in Overload. I guess technically I can stun them with my slow and my freeze with Wicked Implement, and my slow and my freeze with Duskfield Grenade, but I don't have like an outright like unstoppable scout rifle or unstoppable fusion rifle or anything like that. So I'm stunning champions entirely with just my abilities, my slow, and my freeze, which is very cool and kind of unique, and I like it quite a bit instead of just having to spec into, you know, using a certain type of auto rifle to take out the overloads. So that feels really nice, and these are the weapons of choice. Now we're going to go through all of the armor mods that I'm using for this build, starting with the helmet. First things first, like I've mentioned previously, if you're doing GMs, Heavy Ammo Finder, Heavy Ammo Scout on all three teammates is a must. That way you can infinitely gameplay loop heavy ammo around to each other. You make heavy ammo by using your exotic scout rifle, the Wicked Implement, or by using Polaris player's lance, for example, and it says right there, exotic weapons will create that heavy ammo even faster, right? And then because you create it faster, you create more heavy ammo for your teammates, which is a really nice gameplay loop. I use that on every build for GM specifically. And then we have stasis siphons, so that way all of those scout kills are giving me orbs of power, which is going to tie into some more stuff that we'll get into in just a moment. For the gauntlet, we have harmonic loader, so I reload the scout rifle a little faster, and then we have on focusing strike, and then we have on impact induction. Both of these tie into just throwing my melees as much as possible to get my class ability and my grenade back, and that's why I ended up choosing Grim Harvest here, so that way those stasis shards would give me more melee energy, so that way I'm basically just throwing tons and tons of withering blades at all the enemies and getting a really nice gameplay loop of infinite abilities here. That's why I want those. For the chest piece, you can pick whatever resist you want. I go with rainbow resist for GMs, and I keep my distance by using a scout rifle. On the boots, we went with recuperation, classic, of course, for health regeneration, and then we have stasis weapon surge to make the scout just a little more powerful, a little more potent, you know? When you see everyone out there shooting their Polaris Lance and exploding everything, Wicked Implement doesn't clear the ads nearly as fast as Polaris Lance, but even though it doesn't clear the ads as fast, it's still really fun, and you still have a lot of unique abilities that you can then throw, like you throw your grenade, you throw your melee, you have damage resistance, you're freezing and stunning all the champions, so even though you don't get the cool Polaris Lance explosions, you do have a ton of utility, and I still think that this is an excellent and really good option. I'm doing tons of GMs of all the different GMs, really. I'm doing carries and stuff, and I still find this to be very helpful and very useful for doing GMs, even when doing carries. And then lastly, I just went with an innervation. This will just give me even more grenade energy, so that way I can throw even more dusk field grenades. Lastly, we're going to look at the class item for this build. Powerful attraction, of course, on hunters. This is especially good because you're getting your dodge back all the time, and then you'll be able to pick up those orbs that are nearby, which is going to feed into your surges. And then we have time dilation, which is going to make those surges last a little longer, so that way the scout rifle hits harder for a longer period of time. And then lastly, each time you dodge, you're going to get your grenade back even faster, tying into the dusk field grenade build, getting your grenade back all the time. And that's all the mods that I have on the armor. For the stats, of course, 100 resilience is a must. Then of course the second most important would be discipline, and then after that we're going with as much mobility as possible, so that way I can dodge near enemies, giving me my melee charges back and giving me that bomber proc that we're going to get each time we dodge near enemies. So it's a two-part there. That's why you want to go with 100 resilience, 100 discipline, and 100 mobility would be perfect. After that, recovery, intellect, and strength really don't matter too much for this build, in my opinion. I guess if I had to choose one, I'd probably go with as much strength as possible. So that's it for all the stats and all the armor mods. Now we're going to do a breakdown of the artifact that we have here. There's really only 4 mods that help with this GM specifically, and 2 that help this build. You've got Hail the Storm, and you've got Pillar of Ice. I've talked about both these before. They're not like crazy game-changing artifact perks like some of the other ones, like Rays of Precision and Revitalizing Blast is so good, right, this season. That's why a lot of people are utilizing solar builds, and I still highly recommend using them and having one person on your team with this, right? Like if you have one Wellock on your team, they can do the debuffing to the champions, though. You don't need 3 solar Wellocks to get that done. You might as well just let 1 solar Warlock do the job, maybe 2 at most, and then you can use something unique that offers a little more diversity, a little more ease of use of clearing ads or clearing champs, or maybe a little more boss DPS. So I highly recommend to mix it up a little bit in your team composition there. But Pillar of Ice we'll be using, and this is going to defeating an encased combatant spawns a stasis crystal, which obviously ties into our gameplay loop pretty nice there. Going to give us more melee energy, and then we have on top of that shattering encased targets and stasis crystals, deals increased damage, and shattering stasis crystals releases shards of ice that damage and slow targets, so even more slowing of targets, which is really nice. Lastly, you will want this mod here though from whence you came, so we can do more damage to Taken and Sworn combatants, especially in the corrupted. As you can see the gameplay there, you want to run through all those Taken, and you will want this one as well, which is while your super is fully charged, your ability final blows spawn orbs of power, because we're going to have our super quite a bit, and we're going to be using our abilities a ton. You'll be able to make a ton of orbs with this mod right here, so that's going to be really nice synergy for you there with those 4 mods. And that's pretty much everything for this build. If you want the link, the dim link will be down below in the description of the video. If you click on that, it'll put everything on for you, and I think you'll have a lot of fun jumping around in the corrupted GM with this build and in the other future GMs as well, especially anyone that has overloads and unstoppables. This is easily one of the best builds, one of the best loadouts for running through GMs with those champions. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe, smash the like button. I'll see you in the next one. Later. And if you're feeling thirsty out there, make sure to use code LUCKY10P to save some money on G Fuel. Also, make sure you're following me on Twitch and Kick. I go live all the time playing Destiny 2. Lastly, make sure you're following me on X, Instagram, and TikTok, where I deliver Destiny 2 news to you daily. I appreciate all the followers out there.